I know a lot of small business owners out there struggle with creating their mission, their vision, their core values. They're all very important. They're all very trendy. If you've heard me speak, I'm a huge believer of a mission statement are just words on paper stuck to a wall. The way the owner, you, the business owner, behave, your behavior creates your core values. And whatever those core values are, they're fine. You just have to hire the right people who agree with those core values. But what is the higher calling? Why are you really in business? It's not to create a widget or provide a service and make money. What really drives you? What is your promise to your employees? My name is Corey Harlock. I'm the creator of Keyhire, and as always, I will be your host today. I'm very excited about our show today because we have one of the coolest, he's going to get mad at me for saying this, but marketing people you're ever going to talk to. His name's Tony Diamond, and he owns a company called TDThink. And in full disclosure, the reason I wanted to have him on the show today is he helped me completely rebrand my business, Keyhire. And we're going to be rolling that out. Here we are. It's the end of February 2024. So hopefully I'll have that rolled out by, February 2027, 2028. Hopefully we'll have it done before that. But Matt, are you listening to me on this? So as we went through the process, it became really clear to me that, people think branding is for the big companies, Coca-Cola, United Airlines, Microsoft, Google, all that good stuff. But my experience is it's even more important for the small business owner, the entrepreneur, to get it right early so you can operate from a place of knowledge, something that feels good, and you can get your story straight. It took me a long time to get my story straight with Keyhire. So a little bit about Tony Diamond here. He started with a big brand agency, and he used to be the corporate. He was the art director. As it usually happens, got a little disenfranchised with the corporate structure. He's got an entrepreneurial brain, so he went on his own, and his mission is to help people do better, right? He's a grandfather. He's got a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. I'm lucky enough to know his daughter-in-law and get to spend time with her. I've known her for years, and she's also fantastic. Tony has an expression for her because she used to be a tuning, and now she's a diamond, as Tony always says. So, Matt, let's bring Tony on.
Well, hello, Corey.
Hey, Tony, how you doing? Did I get that right about Caitlin? What do you always say? What do you say about?
Almost. You did it was accurate, but you kind of took the clever out of it. She's always been a gem, but now she's a diamond.
There you go. Okay, yeah, didn't have. Okay, cool, love it, awesome. Well, hey, man, thanks for hanging out with us today. I know how busy you are, and I know how hard it is to get on your schedule because I've spent the last 5 months trying to do that. But I'm super happy to have you on the show. Give us kind of TDThink, give us the 30, 60-second overview of TDThink and kind of what your promise is and what you are trying to do with your company.
Oh, I will. Thank you. And by the way, thank you for the introduction. I mean, if I ever need somebody to make other people as proud of me as my mother tries to make them of me, then I'll hire you for that.
Perfect. That's all the prep I do, Tony. It's all the prep I do.
Always. Well, TDThink, you know what? The company is really me. I mean, I do have other people, really smart, good, strong, talented people who come in and help me. But at the core, it really kind of embodies what I'm about. And let me just tell you, you introduced the idea of a promise. My personal promise, which actually is reflected through my personal life as well as my professional life, is to improve the trajectory of people's lives. To improve the trajectory of people's lives. So I really take that extremely seriously. And what you'll hear is, it's almost like an old Baptist preacher standing up and saying, this is what you got to do to live right. But I really do believe that, Corey. And TDThink and the practice that I have is very much about pulling out and extracting from individuals, really, especially in small business, what their truths are, what they're really about, what makes them feel successful, why they believe they're in business on this planet, doing what they're doing right now, and actually engaging them in doing what they feel most naturally is what they're all about, instead of relying on luck or maneuvering or other things to kind of get ahead. So it's kind of getting to the essence of who the person is and how that's reflected in the company, and then making that universally true within their organization, so that when they talk to other people, the promise that they've made for themselves is very clearly reflected in the promises that they're offering to customers, clients, partners, anyone else who would come in contact with them. Does that answer your question?
It does. And so we're kind of getting down to it, because, our first question is always, what is it? And, having intimate experience with you, and I just want to kind of have a conversation around the what is it, because as a business owner, I've seen and I've experienced, we know what we do tactically. Mm-hmm. And then there's always that struggle. We got to have core values. You have to have a vision and mission. And that oftentimes feel like we're kind of digging deep to find the why, but it's not really, right? It's just kind of, it's a lot of work to kind of put verbiage to that stuff. And then the promise is actually deeper in the way I feel it and experience it. It's a deeper dive than vision, mission, core values. It's like the essence. In fact, if you experience or you can figure out what your promise is, all that other stuff kind of falls into place. In terms of keyhire, that would be one of those key pieces of experience. People say, well, we're looking for an accountant, and if they knew QuickBooks, that would be good. And I say, okay, well, what kind of accounting system do you use? And they say QuickBooks. I say, well, that's not a nice to have. That's an essential. If we can get someone who understands QuickBooks, a lot of this other stuff will take care of itself. So speak to me about, that was my experience. It's probably not how you language it, but let's talk a bit about, the promise sounds very big and arduous and scary. And we know business owners are busy and don't have a lot of time. So you do a great job at breaking down what it is and how we can get there.
Yeah. Okay. I'll break that down a little bit for you then. We can juxtapose that against the mission statement. Okay.
Yeah.
Mission statements are kind of like, for some of you who remember these things in magazines a long time ago, it was, draw Sparky, and you send them this picture and they kind of tell you what kind of an artist you are, you can be, and those kinds of things. And they promise for $59.95, they'll train you on how to do that. Well, that's kind of the way mission statements are made most frequently. It's almost as if somebody sends in, $9.95 and they get a kit that says, fill in these two blanks and you have a mission statement. So it could be, to be the leading provider of blank to blank. Fill those two things in, you got a mission statement. Yeah. And then there are others that just kind of get into these, overly aspirational and nondescript things like, and this is actually a major corporation's mission statement, to provide the highest level of service, the broadest selection of products, and at the most competitive prices. That happens to be Home Depot's mission statement.
That's everything to everyone.
You're everything to everyone. And it
you
says
look at that sales. Yeah, you look at that sales pyramid, and it's like, what is it? Cheap, fast, and good. You can only get two. You can't get all three. Well, they just promised kind of all three, right?
They promised all three. But the thing that they did was they didn't put any kind of qualifier, highest level of service, broadest selection. What does that really mean? So while there's nothing wrong with saying those things, and I'm not really throwing rocks at the idea that you want to do those things, But how do you hold your own feet to the fire to say whether or not you're doing that right? And that's not just a matter of metrics. It's a matter of what do our customers feel like when they walk into Home Depot? We'll just use that as the example since I just threw that out there for you.
They do not feel like they're getting the highest level of service, because I've watched guys in their Home Depot apron with their head down, one after another, storm by you, and you're like,
Yeah, I'm going on break. But
yeah.
but that's okay. So Corey, you've put your finger on something that's very, very important. Even if that is your promise, let's just say that's their mission statement, it should be so saturated throughout the whole organization so that there would be nobody on an aisle who would ever walk past a customer if they felt like they wanted to give the highest level of service. I mean, they literally should have it in their revised DNA when they work at Home Depot. It should be, I will never walk past a customer who appears to be in need. I don't care if I'm leaving on break or if I'm getting ready to leave for the day. I'm not going to leave somebody there hanging. That's the way that you can start to feel like you're actually owning something more important than just collecting your paycheck. You are here to actually help people solve problems. So those very broad statements are things that happen very often. And I read recently, there was a Harris poll that said, for instance, 82% of customers prefer buying from brands whose values align with theirs. So that's kind of another layer of this. And I'll get away from the Home Depot example. As we're working closer and closer towards me giving you some examples of some legitimate promises that are out there, think about that. They're value-based. It's, how do you feel? Do you feel like what you're looking for aligns very well with the company, the products or services that you're getting from whoever it is you're dealing with? And if you don't feel like it's aligned, you're probably not going to A, get them as a customer, or B, retain them as a customer if they come to you once. They'll go to somebody else for a cheaper price if they feel like you're not quite aligning with them. So let me just give you some examples of that. You mind if I just, this is the longest answer in history.
No, it's good. You're here to talk about what you know. So that's all right.
Okay. Well, examples of this, and I will use major corporations, but I do want to warn your listeners. This is not just for major corporations. I'll give you some because you recognize who they are. If I gave you small companies, you wouldn't know who they were. So let me just give you an example. I'll give you three. Apple. Everybody knows Apple. Everybody always uses Apple as, a great brand example. Their promise, which is not articulated in the general public, which is another criteria of a promise. It's not a tagline. Their internal promise is to help change the way we think, work, learn, and communicate. To help change the way we think, work, learn, and communicate. And while that doesn't put degrees on it, I think it implies that it's changing in a way that's very positive. Right. But that is very different than saying we're a computer, phone, and streaming service company. It's changing. It's really changed. They're trying to get down to the level of changing the way people do things and making them better, more effective, more efficient at it. So that's the driving force behind Apple.
And it tracks, because if you look at Apple, you would say, yeah, that makes sense. They are living that promise.
Yeah, there's nothing disingenuous about, well, I shouldn't say nothing. They seldom will have evidence of being disingenuous in those quests.
Right.
Another one, let's get from a product company into a service company, and I'll use PricewaterhouseCoopers, big accounting, audit firm, consulting firm. Their promise is to build trust in society and solve important problems. Holy mackerel. That doesn't sound anything like we'll balance your books, we'll do your audits, we'll consult with you on how to be, more efficient with the resources you have in your corporation. I mean, just think about that. They want to build trust. So when you talk about audits aren't just about, and balance sheets and all the accounting work that they do isn't just about making numbers match up. It's about creating truth. And truth equals trust. So if what they're about is finding the truth, they went one level above that and said, it's not just truth we're trying to find, it's trust that we're working to create. Okay. So that's a very different, and they're solving important problems. That kind of gets more to the consulting side of it.
Sure.
They're not there just to take your money in exchange for time, at a very high rate. It's, you have a problem, we're going to make that problem our own, and we're going to work towards a solution on that that's going to be right for you. Okay, third one is in a different space. This is Bright Horizons Learning Centers. Okay, so it's preschool and education learning centers. Many of them are attached to corporations. They'll have their own Bright Horizons unit within a big corporate campus or something like that. Their promise is to make a lasting difference. One child, one student, one teacher, one family, and one employer at a time. So what do they say? And this is their internal promise, that they want every person who walks through their doors to come to work for them to believe that they're here for not just children, students, teachers, families, and employers. That's important. But they go as far as to say, one, it is so individualized. We want to change the life of a student, the well-being of a teacher, the outlook of a family, and an employer's way to be able to bring employees in there that are going to actually have changed existences. So you see how deep this goes. It's getting to the level of trust. It's getting to the level of real change at the individual level. And when I go back to that Harris poll that I talked about, you want to buy from brands whose values align with your own. So if you are taking your child to a learning center, wouldn't you want to feel like they treat that child as an individual, and they think your family is equally important, and they want to make sure that that child and your family come together, and you're able to be part of a community of learners that's better than they would be if Bright Horizons didn't exist. Right. So those are examples of promises that we can see out in the world. So a mistake that I often see companies make is to try to come up with a promise that is also a tagline, and that's not what it is. And at some point, maybe there'll be an appropriate moment here for us to share what Keyhire Solutions promise is, but it is intentionally not supposed to be a tagline, because it's not a promise. It's not something that we want to use to market ourselves. It's something that we want to use to literally change and align the way that we think about ourselves, how we work with one another, the why of what we do, and what impact we have not only on ourselves, but in the world around us. That's really what a promise is about. And it then turns into a pact that everyone can have, like a codicil, one person to the next, saying, it's my responsibility to do what I say for you, and it's your responsibility to say what you're going to do for me, and actually do it. So that's the primer on promise.
So so we're going to kind of move into mistakes next. So before we do that, you brought up the promise that we kind of created for Keyhire, or that you kind of created for Keyhire. And so I remember the process. Is that Canadian or American? Process is the American version.
Process, yeah.
I speak Canadian every now and again. So I remember the day, because I think we were sitting at a coffee shop, right? And you kind of had all these slips of paper, and we were doing it. You had them all laid out, and you were just flipping them over one by one. And I remember some of them were like, no. And then a couple that you hit, and then we talked about them, and I don't even think I remember. It didn't take me long before I was like, this just kind of resonates with me, and I'd never thought of the business like that before. And so the promise that we settled on for Keyhire, the one that you created that hit me the hardest, was to improve lives of small business owners, employees, families, and the communities they serve. And the reason that resonated with me was, I did it, but I didn't know I was doing it, or I didn't think it that way. But we work with small business owners because the number one thing we hear is, I just don't have any time. I'm missing my family. I can't get away. I'm, here all the time. And so we want to help them. But also, the better we make their company, then we we want to support the people in that business because, I mean, I just don't believe in turnover and firing people because we can fire them. We're dealing with human beings, and that's always been something I've been very strong on, right? Like we're dealing with people that are human. They have marriages, they have kids, they have families, they have mortgages, they have kids in school, they have bills to pay. And just, well, if they don't work out, we'll just fire them is not an acceptable practice for people I do business with, right? And so then that's the trickle down to the employee and their family. And then, you and I had the conversation, but if we're doing that, are we not improving the community? Because I've always kind of said, the small business owners are the Fortune 5. These companies are the Fortune 500s of tomorrow. And to get there, they have to have the community support, and they have to be involved in the community. And a lot of these people are involved in their churches, or they have organizations that they want to be involved with. And if we can build stability into their life, then they can go out and do those things. So I had never gone that deep and that personal, or I don't know what the right word is, but it really resonated with me to get to that point. And now I get it. Like it's made such a difference in just my MO, the way I do business, because you understand it now. You understand the holistic picture, or the I hesitate. We talked about using global, but the community picture, right? Like we're here in Houston and we work all over Texas, but we understand the communities that our clients are in.
Very much so. And it speaks very much, Corey, to the integrity that you have as well. And I mean, I will tell you that I will never make the mistake of confusing keyhire.solutions with a headhunter.
Right.
Because I have actually been placed by a headhunter in corporations before, and I've also been in a corporation and hired headhunters to come in. And there's always this gap that I always felt honor bound to try to fill, and that was, I'm not going to bring somebody in just to say we hired somebody and think, well, as long as I get rid of them before they charge me for it, it's okay. I can get rid of them.
Yeah. Before my guarantee.
Right. You don't let people do that. And it's not like people want to hurt somebody else, but it's very easy to get caught up in the hard thing is to find somebody. There aren't many good qualified people right now. Let's just get somebody in here and see how it works out. And you are always saying, no, we're not going to do that. So look at your promise. If you're going to improve the lives of owners, families, employees, you can't treat them that way and say that you're actually improving their lives.
Yeah. And that's why the line
ends up becoming the litmus test for you is, am I improving this person's life by putting them in this place?
Yeah.
And if your answer is, yeah, I'm not sure, then they don't need to go in there. And I know I've heard you say that.
Yeah. And something I get to say, which is really cool, because I have such a unique relationship with my business owners, because we spend so much time together, right? Like we're in-sourced and we're with them and we're working through so much stuff with them. Mm-hmm. When we're working on these roles, and then we find, we're going out and we're in that acquisition phase and we're doing it, the owner sees the candidate sees the owner in the business, but I'm in the middle, and I know both sides of the story. And I get genuinely excited when I'm like, oh, this is such a good match. And but I can see it because I have all of the information. Well, not all, but a lot more than they do, right? Because I've had conversations and I know the owner and I know the culture of the business, and I've gotten to know the people that I'm trying to say, hey, this is a great opportunity for you. And when I see that kind of like, oh, this is going to be great, that's then and only then do I say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, I have someone that I think we need to talk to, right? It's not just trying to shuttle people over there and hoping they pick one. That doesn't work.
Right. And
so
Corey,
let's talk about the mistakes, Tony. Let's get into mistakes, because we can talk about the work we've done together all day.
We could make it a 2-hour session. I know that.
Yeah. So let's kind of help people understand the mistakes they might make if they think this is great, and they're gonna go to work on tomorrow and say, we need to develop our promise, right? What are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make, or pitfalls that someone might want to avoid?
Okay, that's a great question. I mean, one would be that they describe what they do instead of why they do it.
The old Simon Sinek.
Yes, I mean
Well, you were
Simon.
Simon Sinek before
Was right
Simon
on
Sinek.
that. Pardon me.
You were Simon before Simon was around.
Oh yeah, well yeah, he copied me. No, but the fact of the matter is this: if you, it's kind of the old axiom, you know, you need to tell people why you do what you do more than what you do. And I think that is definitely the case. If you want to find ways to, and you had, oh gosh, you had a guest a couple of episodes back who talked about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Maybe you can remember who that was. Anyway, it was a very good episode, and I think that that's kind of at the bottom of all this. If all you're doing as an employer is when you come up with your promise or when you actually interface with any of your employees is to try to motivate them extrinsically, meaning, you know, do your job or I'm going to fire you. Do your job well, I'm going to give you a little more money. Do your job extremely well, I'm going to promote you. These are all extrinsic motivations. What I very much look towards is how can we intrinsically motivate people? So in your case, if you had employees who also felt very engaged with the idea of wanting to improve lives, then you're going to be very attractive to them. If they feel like you're operating at an integrity level and at a moral integrity level that's higher than others would have, they're going to want to come to work with you. So your listeners who work in organizations that tend to have that kind of a strong moral compass, let's just say, they'll attract people like that because their promise is actually reflected pretty much in everything that they do. So yeah. I think that's one of you were asking about pitfalls. That's one of the things is to make sure that you're getting more to the why of what you're doing and not just the what of what you're doing. Let me think.
But Tony, just to jump in there, that switching from a what to a why, it's a big lever to pull, right? Yes. That is a big shift. And I would argue a business owner sitting in a room by themselves is going to be in really tough trying to get there, right? And I'm speaking from experience. I understand it fundamentally, why versus what. But when you're in it, and especially if you're working 60 hours a week and you're really trying to build a business and you're trying to add, transformational talent and you're trying to add roles and change your org chart and all that stuff, taking the time to reflect on that and trying to make that mental shift when you're in the thick of it, I have found personally to be, I couldn't do it. I'm sure there's some people out there that could, but I would argue most people probably couldn't.
No, you get too in the weeds, and I will tell you too, everybody has bias. And frankly, there are few people who have more bias than owners because everything is on the line for them.
For sure.
So yeah. They believe and they rightfully believe that every move they make is going to be a make or break, live or die kind of decision. And while that may be true in certain circumstances, I would actually challenge them to say that the most important decision you can make is what we're talking about right now. What's the real promise of your organization? And Corey, you'd asked me about what are the mistakes they make. I do want to bring up one other thing. I hope we're not going too long on this, but it was a key. It's a key aha moment, I think, with every client that I work with, and I think you can speak to this in our experience as well. And that is when you start looking at the customers that you're actually working with, there tends to be this mass overgeneralization and the desire to say they all fit into this bucket or they're all motivated by this. And the fact of the matter is, with very few exceptions, that's not the case. That's never the case. So there's almost a universal, I'm going to use a really harsh word, laziness that some owners will use because they just want to say, oh yeah, we understand our customers. They all want this or they're all like that. And the fact of the matter is they're probably not. And the more you treat them like they're all the same, the more likely it is. If you treat them all on the average, they are going to see you as an average provider. And that's
Right.
the
Or
only way the most succinct way I can say that.
And I think that if you kind of zoom in on that, if you treat them all as average, then your offering becomes very, what's the greatest good for the greatest number, and not as specialized as you might be, right?
Right.
And speaking to that, so when we went through our process, what I didn't realize was going to happen, and what was the coolest surprise of all of this was, we say we work with small business owners. Mm-hmm. But what we now understand is, and I now explain it, like we see small business owners as an umbrella term. And under that umbrella, there are 5 distinct categories of business owner, right? Which you so brilliantly branded the key owner stages, and which will be up on the new website when we get that up there. But it was eye-opening for me because it enables me to ask better and different questions. It enables me to understand who they are and what their needs really are. Of the 5 people, of the 5 key owner stages that you were able to develop, from stage to stage, there might be some overlap, but as a whole, each one has a very unique and specific need that you were able to identify, and now we can identify and provide that, way much more tailored and kind of targeted service versus, hey, this is what we do for all of our customers. It's now like, well, let's talk about your business so I can understand where you are, so I can tell you exactly how I can help you. And I didn't have that before. I agree with you that as a business owner, we get so biased. The other thing I would add, and I'm only speaking from experience, is the dialogue or the soundtrack in your head about your business when it's just you and you're trying to make this leap from what to how. It's hard to stop that or interrupt it or cut it off and clear it out so you can kind of come from a new perspective, because it always creeps in, right? It's funny, you'll just kind of always end up where you were, and you're like, well, that's what it is. I've done the work and it came out the same as it did last time.
Yeah. That's the definition of insanity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we could use that word to, you have to be a little crazy to want to start and run your own business too. So that's one of the endearing qualities of our business owners, that, they're crazy enough to go out and, well, what was that? Going back to Apple, right? This is for the, well, remember that commercial they did? This is for the rebels, the crazies, the whatever. It was that black and white commercial they did way back when that was so revolutionary.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Did you have anything to add to the mistakes before we kind of get into, if someone is listening to this saying, and I will vouch for it, it's business changing and life changing, because it gives you a whole new confidence and excitement and focus about what you're doing. So I recommend that people take this journey. Good. And you're not paying me to say that. I'm just saying.
Well, it doesn't matter if they do it on their own or if they do it with help. It's just, I believe it's vitally important to do this. I mean, Lewis Carroll once said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way, almost by force of habit, that's almost the way small business people work. It's just like, I just got to keep moving. I just got to keep doing something. And if that's not working, I'm going to do something different. But how do you decide what different thing to do? You have to have some purpose behind it and some real, some guideline. So I think those are the major things that I think could be mistakes. But I mean, if we talk about what steps they should go through, I'll kind of, okay.
Yeah. So someone's listening to this right now, Tony, I'm a business owner. I'm listening. I'm thinking, man, this sounds cool. I think I'd like to do this. Other than calling you, and we'll get your info here in a second, but other than calling TDThink, what could they do on their own to kind of start their journey?
Good question. So let me give you
no other way to do it.
I'll give you 3 steps. I'll give you 3 steps.
Cool.
Okay.
Right.
And I'm going to start with another quote. And this is a quote from FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. There are many ways of going forward, but only one way of standing still. So if all these pathways are open to you, the best thing that you can do is start to narrow the pathways so that you can concentrate your focus and actually do things every day that matter to what your future state's going to be. So the first thing that you need to do, and this is one of the last mistakes I was just talking about, number 1 is get to know your customer base. And underneath that, think about 3 things. 1 is you want to get rid of preconceptions. Don't believe that you know them in a general sense. Get rid of the preconceptions. The second thing is don't overgeneralize. One of my favorite, reminders for people is one size, while one size may fit all, it fits few well. And that's something that we don't want to do by overgeneralizing. The other thing that you want to get to do with your customer base is dig deep and then dig deeper. And Corey, that's what you and I did. We started out we were up here and then we came a little deeper. And then I said, no, that's not enough. We got to dig even deeper than that. We need to know, break out the customer base based on them, not on your thought of who they are, but really on the way they operate. Fully understand what they need to succeed and then get it for them, even if you're not the solution, even if it's somebody else.
And just a sidebar to that, you really have to check your ego to do that. Because I remember you pushed me and I'm like, how much information does this guy need? I know what I'm talking about. And then it turned out I didn't know what I was talking about. And so it can feel like, whatever. I know my customers. Mm-hmm. When you do the process correctly, you have a lot to learn about your customers.
If you're honest with yourself and if you'll continue to challenge yourself to dig deeper, just do that. You dig deeper and you dig a little deeper. Yeah. Another thing you can do to know your customer base is anticipate their motivations, not just their needs, but what's actually motivating them to do things. You may think they all want to save money, but the real fact may be that there's something even bigger than that's motivating them. A number of different things that you dig deep enough. Right. So that was number 1 is know your customer base. Number 2 is evaluate what your promise should be. Okay. So it's sometimes you have to have the courage to risk something big for something good, which means that instead of saying what you do and how you want to do it, think what can we do that's actually good, that's actually going to make ourselves, our customers, the users of our products better than they might have been otherwise. And if you can do that and articulate that, then you're really in the right place. And we talked about Keyhire's promise. Improving lives is a much better motivator than getting widgets out the door. The third thing that people should do is honestly evaluate your current status. Okay. And then once you've evaluated your current status, meaning what are your strengths? What are you actually good at? Where do you have gaps? Things like that. That's where people like Keyhire can come in and actually help you fill some of those gaps. But understand where you are right now and then create a pathway to your future state. So if you start here and you want to get to up here, what are the things that you need to do to move the company in that direction? And those are things that you can actually see from where you are right now. If you'll just stop for a moment and evaluate what it's going to take to get from here to there. And then you create a culture that's all about moving in that direction. Awesome. So those are the 3 steps. Those are 3 steps that I would encourage your listeners to evaluate for themselves.
Okay. So now I'm listening to this. I'm like, that sounds great, but I'd rather just call Tony and talk to him about this. How do we get in touch with you, Tony?
Well, you can always go to my website. It's TDThink.com. That's the best place to go. And from there, you can find links to LinkedIn and things like that. But just look at that, send me a message, and I'm happy to help you any way I can. In the future, there'll be a book coming out.
Cool.
But when that happens, I'll let you know about that. But it's actually a book that's going to be supported by a full platform around it. So it'll have supports on it, AI tools, online worksheets, all kinds of things you can work with. that's still probably at least a year out.
Yeah.
But at some point we'll be doing that, and we'll share that with people as well.
Yeah, I'd love to help you get the word out for it because I believe in it. Thanks, man, for spending some time with us. I know people will find this valuable. I've had Keyhire for 17 years now, or 7 years. And it was the coolest thing I've done with this company in 7 years. I've worked with you, and I enjoyed the process, and it strengthened what we do, our resolve behind what we do. It's helped me make better choices around who I work with and why I'm working with them, and laying it out to them like, this is how we do things. And we won't, there's some things we just don't compromise. So it was awesome. And I'm really happy you were able to make time to spend with us today. And I know if people are kind of feeling like I was, like, I know what I do, but it's got to be more to it. This is a wonderful process to go through.
Well, thank you, Corey. And I would also just encourage your listeners. One of the things that made our working relationship so successful is, as you said earlier, you have to check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to take a hard, critical look at things that you might think you're doing well or the best that anybody can do it, but it actually can be done better. So that ego checking is a huge part of moving forward, and the willingness to change.
So that's a nice way of saying the most difficult thing about working together was my shitty attitude.
It was not that way at all. Not that way at all.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you.
All right, Corey. Thank you.
So there he is, Tony Diamond with TDThink. I really can't recommend Tony highly enough. My work with him was really transformational, and I enjoyed it. It's hard work, but I enjoyed it. So give him a call, reach out, pick his brain. He's a help first kind of guy. You're not going to be on the clock. At the beginning of this episode, I was saying, core values and mission and vision are really words on a page stuck to a wall that if they're not inherent, if they aren't what you truly believe, they're exactly that. Words on a page stuck to a wall that no one pays attention to. Your culture is really the actions and beliefs of its owner and its leaders. And this process will take you to a deeper understanding of what that is. And one of the things I've learned over the years is every environment, every business, every culture, every leader is perfect for someone. And so what you'll go through in this process isn't changing who you are. It's identifying who you are. So now you can be clear that in your hiring, as you build your team, you're hiring people that believe what you believe. And if your belief is, I don't care, I want to make as much money as I can, there are people that are perfect for that environment. If your belief is, I want to make the world a better place and make some money, there are people that believe that too. But understanding what that is key when it comes to building your business internally and externally. So keep that in mind as you move forward. I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Tony one more time. Again, my name is Corey Harlock. I'm the creator of Keyhire. I have been your host for this episode of the Keyhire Small Business Podcast. And until next time, stop grinding, start growing.